Welcome to PhotoshopUser TV, brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And now, here are your hosts, the Photoshop guys.
Hello everyone, welcome to PhotoshopUser TV. We are brought to you by the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, those who bring you Photoshop User. And that's a new issue.
It is.
The new issue is
Video in Photoshop.
There you have it, Photoshop User Magazine, and of course, the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. We are located at PhotoshopUser.com. Hi everyone, I am Corey Barker, and I am joined today by the Photoshop girl, Jessica. Look, she's showing off.
I know, I'm looking at your cool stuff. You have like
Showing off my stuff.
you have
That's
like
awesome.
you have like 4 cool things in this issue.
I have a cool thing in every magazine.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it
More
would.
than one.
No, but thank you.
sell
No,
yourself
that's
short.
that's the Thor one. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
like that.
I had fun with that one. Anyway, so be sure to check out the magazine. Once again, the Photoshop girl is here. Jessica Maldonado, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I wasn't here last week. What happened? What happened 20 minutes
Pure
ago?
awesomeness.
Well,
Oh, really?
good stuff.
Did it really?
We
Yeah, Matt
changed
was
the
here.
world with our Photoshoppery.
Well, then my job is
We
done.
were saving lives, Corey. Saving lives.
And I missed it. I had to do life saving in the field. So. And of course, over there at the Weather Center, naturally, is Pete.
How's it going, guys? Good to
man
be back.
Collins.
You know, it was a tough trip from last week to this week. I had to stay here the whole time, but good to be here.
He lies. Good beer. Yeah, you were in Europe. How was it?
Europe was great, except for having to hang out with Dave Clayton and Glenn Dewis.
I was gonna say you did it.
It was good. Cheesy thumbs.
Anybody who
Good time.
knows Dave Clayton and Glenn Dewis knows what we mean, because there are a couple of really goofy British guys. We love them,
Awesome guys.
but and Glenn's going to be at Photoshop World, but
Glenn is going to be at Photoshop.
Dave will
World.
not. I remember him telling me that he wasn't going to be able to make it this time.
What was unique is I was able to go to dinner with those two, and my two 13-year-olds, almost 14-year-olds, came to dinner with us, and they were the most mature guys at the table, my 13-year-olds, because Glenn, Dave, and I are all about 11 or 12 in our maturity level, so it was a good crowd.
So it worked out nicely for everyone. All right, before we get too far off topic here with London and everything, so I'm going to dive right in. In fact,
So
the
jealous.
lineup says I'm first.
Hey, Corey, do you have a little tutorial or
Do
something for us?
I do have a little tutorial. It's actually not little. It's actually a fun thing. I was inspired by Jessica, perhaps, I don't know. You did the stitching. Remember the thing you did with the stitching and everything like that? So I'm kind of played around with that, and I was thinking, wouldn't it be kind of cool to take it to another level? And I actually did a tutorial on this some while back, but doing like embroidering, like stylish type of stitching.
Cool.
So here's what we're going to do. I've got a document. It's just a denim background, so we're going to actually do that kind of patchwork. In fact, I'll just give you a little preview. A little something like that. Ooh,
Did you make that denim?
I did. No, I actually didn't make the denim, but I can.
You could.
Not to say that I couldn't. It just saves time using stock art sometimes.
That's true.
All right, but brushes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new document, and let's just make it a square. Well, let's do 5 by 5 inches at 72. Perfect. And I'm going to go and get, in the shape tools here in the toolbar, the rounded rectangular tool. And I'm going to want to draw it not as a path nor a shape, but rather just pixels. Which this is kind of a funny function of this. You're selecting the path tool to draw a pixel shape. Why not? So obviously I want it to be rounded. Didn't even select the rounded one. There we go. Rounded rectangle. So there we go. So I want it to be this long, kind of narrow, rounded edge line. And I'm actually going to have it fill with black. So I'm on a new blank layer. I'm just going to draw that line vertically, something like that. Okay? And then I'm going to lock the transparency over here in the layers panel. Let's just bring this over. But my workspace is just chaos.
I was going to say,
here.
you have more panels open.
Let's clean it up a little bit. Reset. Okay.
Oh, I can
That's
breathe.
better. All right. So again, with the layers panel.
Those of us with a little OCD, we're really having a hard time following you.
So I'm going to lock the transparency here, right here at the very top, and then to go into the filter menu, go to render and choose fibers. That gives us this kind of streaky look inside of it, and we can boost the strength in here. And it's what this is designing. What this is doing is this is like one strand of the thread, and that noise in there. It kind of gives it that little streakiness, a little bit of texture like it's actual thread, because thread isn't actually solid. It's actually got that little bit of light and texture to it. But I'm going to add to it a little bit more by adding a little bit of a motion blur. And 90 straight up and down, that looks pretty good. Okay. Now I'm going to use levels here just a little bit to darken it up, just because we're going to define this as a brush, and the darker the areas are, the more opaque the brush is going to be. But I want to have some subtle light areas in the brush, so that'll be fine. Now, all I got to do, go to Edit, and define brush preset. I don't have to make a selection or anything like that, because it's going to ignore the white areas and leave them transparent, and the gray areas will be somewhat transparent. So define brush preset, and we'll call it Stitch 1. Why not? I never actually name my brushes, so I don't know why I was doing that anyway. So let's jump back over to our file here. I'm going to create a new document, and let's go and get our newly defined brush. Now here it is right there. Now, right out of the box, or right out of the menu rather, is if I just paint, it just does that. Well, that's not what I want. So we need to change the behavior of the brush. So here in the brush options, let's open up the brush panel here. The first thing I'm going to activate is shape dynamics. Actually, no, I'm going to go into brush tip shape and boost the spacing a little bit. And if I do that, you can see eventually it's going to get spaced out like that. Then I'm going to activate shape dynamics right here. And we're going to take the size jitter and set the control to pen pressure, because I am in fact using a pressure sensitive tablet. So go ahead and set it to that. And then the angle jitter down here, notice I got it at around 3. I just want to have that slight variation of angle, because in stitching, embroidering, you notice that every line is not perfectly parallel, but rather it's just slightly staggered like that. And that's what's going to give us that effect there. So if I go over here and just do a kind of a test stroke here, we get, oh, there, it looks pretty good. Not too bad. Let's bring the size down a little bit. Now you'll notice, and it's already because it's on, my brush would actually be in this position. Let's go here. So if I were to paint with it, you can see the lines stay in one direction there. But I actually want it to kind of follow along the path of my brush. So change the control here to direction. And then as you paint, it will add that to the brush.
That's neat.
So now we are ready to add some effects to it. So if I go in and let's actually copy this layer style over, so you want to see me go through and do it all over again. What I've got here is, wrong layer, sorry. So I've got 3 layer styles here to help enhance this effect. There's a bevel and emboss. If I go in here and just double click, I've got an inner bevel. The depth is set pretty high at around 300, and I've just got all the other default settings here. But I've also got an outer glow. This has got a little bit of a shadow to the stitching, and then a drop shadow just enhances that shadow even more so. So just piling these on top of each other. And if I go and get a color here and just paint with my brush, voila. So I can see that shadow is just a little bit harsh. So let's make that glow, bring it down a little bit. There we go. So instead of just getting one size stitching, we can actually, lighter I press down, harder I press down, I get a cool embroidered pattern. So if you were to take this, I'm actually going to get my brush I used earlier. There it is. So using that same thing. So there's my little stitching brush right there. So you can go in here and just then have fun with it. You can go write some tags, PSU, yes, no. Or you can just kind of go in here and that's one color. But then I'm going to make a new layer and just option drag that layer style to that next layer. So it's using the same styles to define the shape, and then just change the color. And then we can add branches to our embroidered palm trees.
Very neat, Corey.
But there's just all too much fun to have with a simple brush. So combining my 2 favorite things in Photoshop, that's the brushes, and the custom brushes and the layer styles. You can pretty much virtually create anything and make it look as realistic as possible. Isn't that pretty cool, though?
Very cool.
Neat. Pete, what do you think?
Phenomenal.
No, it isn't. So, with that,
I was trying to think of a good pun. I was going palm, leaves. I got locked up.
well, the good news is you have a break to figure it out. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come right back. Jessica and Pete will share a little something, and we will continue on. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
And we're back.
And we're back. Yes, indeed. So
Corey, that was so good. You had me in stitches.
But
Hey.
What do you need to have that sound effect?
oh, we should have a sound effects panel right here.
We'll work on that while Pete. First, Pete, talk about Expo Imaging because you actually use that.
Well, yeah, I love the Expo Imaging. We've used them for a lot of different things. One of their products that they have, you need to check out all their products, but one of the products that I've used a lot, especially when I was and am using shooting weddings. Expo Imaging has an Expo disc. You can take your camera, you go into a situation where there's a lot of mixed lighting, you place it on the front of your lens, take a reference photo, and then you adjust your white balance to that photo. And then all your photos that you take in that mixed lighting will have a great white balance to them. So it's a great way to make sure that you're getting the right representation of what the light is for that environment instead of having to try to figure it out in post-processing. Mm-hmm. And so I really love it, especially you go into a cathedral, a church, you've got that sunlight coming in, but then you've got the tungsten lights, you got other things in there. Expo Imaging can really help you nail that white balance exactly right the first time.
And you found a way to throw in tungsten.
Tungsten.
Lovely. Well, back to Pete. It's actually, Pete, you're up.
Man, I'm just juggling all over the place.
We can't have enough of you.
Can't get enough of me. All right, so last week I was in London, did a little family vacation, and we took a bicycle tour down the Thames River, you know, we Americans, we kill everything over there, even though English is supposed to be our mother tongue. And so I'm literally on the bike tour, and I've got a little Nikon 1 V2 mirrorless camera that I'm taking around. I'm going more to be on a family vacation than a landscape portrait photographer. I'm going getting snapshots along the way. And this was a shot I took of the Tower Bridge. This is not the London Bridge, as most people will say. This is the Tower Bridge. The London Bridge is just down the way, and it's pretty disappointing. So this is a picture of the Tower Bridge, and it doesn't happen as often nowadays, but we have a boat going through and the drawbridge is going up, so I got a nice picture of that. And it's an okay picture, but I wanted to jazz it up. And one of the first things I wanted to do was deal with the water. If I was going to shoot this as a landscape photographer, I'd have a tripod, I'd have probably a neutral density filter to let that water flow through and get a nice silky smooth water surface. I didn't have that opportunity, but I can do some things here in Photoshop. One of the first things I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a selection of this water. And I'm just going to draw quickly, and I'm going to grab everything that is water very quickly. And I'm tracing around the base of the bridge, and I'm just going right along the water line here. And I'm making a selection of the water. Okay, so now I'm going to hit Command or Control J, which is going to make a copy of that selection. It's going to bump it up on its own layer. And so now if I hide the background layer, you can see what I've selected. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a secondary copy just in case I screw up the first time, because I tend to do that a lot. So that's why, besides the undo button, Command J is one of my favorite buttons because I'm always making copies for safety. Now I'm going to go to Filter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a blur tool, and I'm going to use motion blur to recreate as if the water is flowing down the river. And so I'm going to simply set this angle. Because of the way I'm sitting, I'm just going to set it for horizontal. Now I could get a little, I could do it so it's flowing a little bit more down the river, set it maybe an angle of 3 or whatever, but for this I just did it at a perfectly horizontal level, and then I just hit, well, that looks pretty good, and hit OK. Now the thing is, when I originally did this photo, it was cropped this way, but I want to give the water a little bit more impact. So I just simply hit Command or Control T, and you can see I already cheated here. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit more. So I have a little more water to play with. Now the thing about this is, whoop, that was horrible. You didn't see that. Let me pull this back up so it actually meets the top up there. Okay, now you'll see that there are a couple things that you have to deal with when you're doing this. First of all, it gets a little flat here, but also it doesn't give me as much of this this boat as I'd like. So I'm just going to create a new selection with my lasso tool, and I'm just going to go quickly around the boat. I'm going to make a copy, make sure it's, select the bottom layer, bring it up on top of the other layer. I'm going to hit Command F, because whatever filter I just used, it's going to be able to use it again without me having to go up into the filter menu. See, it sits right here and says whatever that last filter is, it'll apply it again. So I had a motion blur to that boat. I'm going to bring it back down. And I'm just doing this to add a little bit more color and stuff to that, but I'm going to drop the opacity way down, and then I will use a layer mask and a soft brush just to come in and tweak that a little bit, but it's going to give me a little bit more of a representation of that boat in the water. Now, if you look real closely, when I motion blurred the water, it gave me kind of this fuzziness here. Well, the good news is I can do the same thing, put a layer mask on there with that icon, drop my brush down a little bit, and just make sure I'm set for opacity 100%, and I can just paint back where that fuzziness kind of hits that tower. Now, we're going to get a little funkiness in a couple areas right there, so I'd have to just go in slightly and adjust some of that. But in no time at all, I can give that water a much better look, as if it's a lot more silky. It's not as choppy, and it gives me a great, more stylized look to this shot. It doesn't look like a snapshot. It starts to look like I had some thought in the picture when really I didn't. And then I just come in and I tweak it a little. I add some multiply and screen filters over the top of it, and then I add a little vignette. And I liked it all right. But then what I like to do is take a photo and give it some substance. So I then brought it over and laid it on top of a vintage piece of paper, so it then becomes more looking like a postcard. As a matter of fact, in the final product, I put a little stamp or something in there. But I wanted to leave you with this, and I've talked about this before, but somebody asked on Google Plus how I do this. I simply bring in that image, and let's do this one. I bring in that image, but I've got it set for, when it comes in, it comes set in normal, and I just simply make a selection of that piece of paper and then cut out the edges around that so it fits onto the postcard. Once I get that, I make a copy and I set one for multiply, which kind of darkens and pulls in some of those textures, and then I set one for screen. And so if I take off the multiply layer, you can barely see anything going on with the screen, but then I add the multiply layer, and the two together give you a great interaction with the paper underneath. Mm-hmm. As you can see, I've added a mask to each one of these. And so let's say I wanted to lighten up an area. I come over to the multiply layer, and I would come in maybe along this crease right here. I'm showing you at 100% just to show you how much it works, but I can lighten up that area. Let's undo it and drop it down to maybe 20% opacity, just hitting 2. And I can come in here and really trace along that edge right there, these creases right here, and I start to pull back some of that paper, and it really allows you to interact with the background. And it's all by simply just taking 2 layers, setting one to screen, one to multiply, and then applying a mask and the opacity of those 2 layers to get that kind of feedback that you want from that paper background. And so in no time at all, I took a snapshot and was able to transform it into something that looks pretty good.
That all too critical aspect of blend modes.
Yep.
It's all over the program, and yet it can make all the difference in the world just by switching one little blend mode.
Well, and we also get caught, we're also tunnel vision about what things do. The whole idea of doing 2 blend modes and having them interact, because the way they each work does something a little bit different, but it's then going to allow stuff to come through. We oftentimes will go, well, I'll try multiply, I'll try screen. No, these don't look right, and so we just can it. Whereas if you try another one and work on multiplying those together, you'll get a much better result.
And of course, don't forget blend modes also. I mean, a lot of people think blend modes are just layers, but they exist on all the tools, and any of the brush features. They can certainly, and layer styles. There's a lot of interaction with blend modes in layer styles too. So blend modes all day.
That's such a cool look for travel shots, especially someplace with such history like London.
Yeah, and the great thing is I then went in Fotolia. I got a nice, let's see if I can grab it real quick. I get,
You can totally turn that into like a cool header image for your Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, I posted it on, and if we go back to my screen, I then put on a nice little Great Britain stamp or whatever, and then I've actually got some people, I put it on Google Plus to see who could give me the best tagline to put at the bottom of the postcard. I was going to put like, "This is not London Bridge," but I'm waiting to see if anybody gives me a better feedback on that. So if you're on Google Plus, go find this, leave me a great comment, and maybe I'll give you something from Corey's office.
Beat this cat.
I see London. I see.
I see London, I see France. I've already been there. If it's immature, I've already thought of it, so you got to be a little better.
Yeah, I have kids at home too. Sorry about that.
Everything in my office is all under NDA, so it'll have to wait. Now, before we go to Jessica, which I can see she's got something really cool waiting to happen, given this to go on my screen, I have to show you what I did last night. I was showing this around the office today. I'm playing around with 3D, of course, in Photoshop, and there you can see it's Lego, Scott. It ended up working out so well. I'm working on Lego guys for all the Photoshop guys. So
yeah, it looks awesome.
In fact, I'll give you here's a little preview. Here's RC, and it's in typical fashion with his Dunkin' Donut coffee.
Perfect
right there.
detail.
So I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of those and create a nice, cool poster. So I just had to share that anyway. All right. So Jessica, please, what do you have?
Well, I would like to extol the virtues of.
Oh, she's going.
She's extolling.
She's extolling.
We don't extol around
the
here, Jessica.
virtues of double processing using Camera Raw when you're retouching. It's one of the many, many things I've picked up over my almost 8 years here at Kelby Media Group, laying out all of Scott's books. But I do this on pretty much every product shot that I retouch and some of the portraits, and I'll show you a little quick version of each.
Okay.
And on my screen right now I have a product shot that we'll be using in the second edition of the digital photography book, part
AP, it's a
2.
Well, you've just spoiled the book for me now. I'm not going to be able to watch it.
Oh,
read it.
so page 124 is ruined for you. I'm very sorry.
I can't read anyway, so no problem.
We know.
Okay, so
Hey, Corey, let's see how many times we can fluster Jessica
yes,
today.
make me flustered. I don't fluster easily at all. I'm going to grab the eyedropper here to set our white balance and just go somewhere where I know it's white for sure and give it a click. And I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit, maybe bring out the shadows and bring down the blacks. And I'm going to pump up the clarity for the products just to bring in some of that crunchiness and the detail of the camera texture.
Can you pump up the jam?
I will pump up the jam later, Pete. We're working right now.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Jeez.
So
I'm learning here.
There's a couple of things you could do here. If you open the image, it's going to keep those Camera Raw settings. If you hold down Option, you can open a copy. If you hold down Shift, you can open an object. This time, we're going to hold down Option or Alt and open a copy of that image. Takes a minute.
Now, of course, just to point out, if you don't hold down Shift and you saw Object, it actually brings it in as a smart object.
Yep, I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to do that next.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was
It's
going
just
over
full
to
of spoilers today.
I am.
It's okay.
So.
I'm going to make this my crunchy layer. If I can spell.
It's cool that she describes it as crunchy.
Crunchy. And then I'm going to open it again into Camera Raw. Do the same white balance setting. This time I'm going to leave the clarity where it is. Maybe increase the sharpening a little. Just to get sharpening around the edges. And hold down Option or Alt again to get another copy. And we'll drag one on top of the other. And Option click on the layer mask to hide the top. That's, of course, our smooth layer. So we have crunchy and smooth. And things that you don't want to be all crunchy and hard, you're going to go in and paint with white on your mask.
Kind of like a Snickers bar.
I was going to say,
Crunchy and smooth.
It's crunchy.
peanut butter. Are you a crunchy or smooth?
It's crunchy, it's smooth.
I process crunchy. I process smooth.
So anyway, things that you wouldn't really want to be, this is maybe not the best example, but I'll show you again. With a portrait.
So basically, you're able to get the best of both worlds. Any place that you want to be smoother.
Here you might not want it to be so hard with so much clarity, so you might want to knock that out.
You can be choosy.
Knock out things in the background so that you're not spending too much time with your healing brush.
Like most of the world, you can decide what you want to be clear on and what you don't want to be clear on.
That's right. And I'm going to show you.
Right, Pete?
I am purposely obtuse about that.
Indeed.
I'll show you one more way to do that.
Are you extolling right now?
I'm extolling the virtues. We're all about SAT words here today.
You started with nuance, and we
I know,
went
nuance.
uphill from there.
Here's another example. We might want to have a version with more clarity for the hair and the edges of the suit and things like that. And then we want to come back and make the skin areas softer and blend them together. So we'll do whatever retouching we're going to do in Camera Raw. You can spend as much time as you want here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time right now. And then this time I'm going to hold down Shift so that we get that Open Object button.
She has objectified that image.
She did.
That's our crunchy layer. We can rename it since we're
Name it Captain.
Captain Crunch. Now if we right click on the layer, we can make new smart object via copy so that we are able to change the settings of that layer without affecting our original layer. So open that up.
Because if you just made a copy of that smart object, it would repeat.
That's right.
it.
They both would change.
Now, one of my sorry, I'm going to jump in here. One of
That's
my
okay.
favorite buttons on this is to go up and click on that right corner to hit previous conversion down there above the. Do you know where? Yeah,
No,
over there. Over there.
where?
Keep going right there. Drop down and hit previous conversion. I use that all the time when I'm working through several images. It already sets me up for what I've done
Applies
before, and
previous
then I can
settings,
make
yeah.
a couple quick adjustments.
That's handy. That would have helped us with the other one since we opened two different versions, but this one actually already had those settings since we duplicated
Yeah, you're late, Pete.
Oh, I'm late.
But see, we have the clarity still all the way up from the other layer, but now we could just pull that down, do some negative clarity to smooth the skin.
Smooth that skin.
Smooth that skin. You can make any other changes here you want, and since it's a smart object, you can keep popping it open and closing it, making any other changes that you want. Let's zoom in on them. We don't want the whole image to be soft, so we're going to Option or Alt click on the mask icon to make a black layer mask, which is hiding everything on that layer. And again, we'll get our brush with a soft white brush and paint anywhere we want the skin to be smooth, anywhere we want the background to be smooth, but everything else is still staying sharp because we're showing that other sharper layer. And now that's a very good kickstart to any retouching that you're doing. And then you can, of course, Command Option Shift E, Control Alt Shift E, and merge those layers and do any other, cleaning up of the eyes, getting rid of those little veins, all your other retouching that you want to do. But you could always go back to these crunchy and smooth layers anytime you want because they're smart objects. So
It's the most
pretty cool.
efficient, non-destructive way of working.
That is, and you could pull down the saturation,
It is extolled by virtues.
change skin tone color, do all kinds of stuff. And yes, I know you can do healing and stuff in Camera Raw, but I'm a Photoshop addict.
Well, and I was sitting
we
here
all?
thinking, okay, well, you've got the adjustment brushes
I
in
know.
Camera Raw that you can use, but one of the things that would happen is you apply the global clarity or whatever to it, and then you're having to fight that back with the adjustment brush. And yes, you can do it, but this is definitely another way to do it that you're going to have a little more control. And once again, it's another option, and it's a great option. I love it, especially with the Smart Object Edition.
It's just good to have a whole bunch of different ways of doing things so that, one image might call for a little more control. So you might want to have it pulled into Photoshop like I've done so that you can just keep going over and over different areas, add more eyelashes with one of Corey's cool brushes, or, you know, all kinds of cool stuff.
No, never mind.
Share.
While we reflect on that, let's take another quick break. We're going to come back. We got a giveaway. I've got a little prize right here. I can't show you yet. But stay with us. We'll be right back, and we will give some stuff away, wrap things up right here on Photoshop User TV.
Get the world's best photography, lighting, and Photoshop training at Photoshop World. Here's the top 10 reasons you should attend. It's 3 non-stop days of real-world training where you can get personal attention and unlimited access to the world's top instructors in Photoshop and photography. When you attend, you'll have chances to experience hands-on live shoots and workshops, outrageous after-hours parties and events, and hundreds of classes for all skill levels, along with dozens of opportunities to network with other attendees. In-depth, one-on-one portfolio reviews from industry professionals and see new cutting-edge technology. Plus, you can even earn continuing education and graduate-level credits from attending. This is the must-attend conference for photographers and Photoshop users. Register before August 2nd and save $100. Sign up today. Photoshop World, the world's best Photoshop and photography conference.
Let's just all stare at the camera. Don't say anything, just stare.
Well, as you might have guessed, maybe you didn't guess, you know. You've probably had enough of us by now, but we're going to get out of here in just a minute. But we have a giveaway, of course. We have, this week, the Perfect Photo Suite 7 from On One Software. Fabulous photo suite. I actually still use this. You use it too, right?
Yep.
Love it, On One stuff. And what's great about this suite is that functions as a plug-in with Photoshop or Lightroom, and also is a standalone. You can actually use it to edit your photos.
It's a pretty good interface, too.
It is. So how do you win it? I don't know. You go to...
Tell us, Corey.
You tell us. You go to kelbytv.com/contest. Go to the menu right down here where it says Photoshop User TV, enter your name, email, and drop us a comment. Any requests you want to see on the show. The winners will be picked at random, so just by all means tell us what you'd like to see or not see, or who you'd like to see or not see. Anyone? No. Be sure and drop us a line, and we thank you guys again for joining us this week on Photoshop User TV. Thanks again to Jessica.
Thank you, Corey.
Very cool stuff once again, and Mr. Pete.
So jealous of your vacation?
He looks like he's, yeah, I had a great time. It was so
Don't
much
rub
fun.
it in.
It was awesome, but we were also traveling with 7 kids, and there are times that I was ready to get back to work.
Then there's that.
I still love you, dear, and I love you, kids, but I'm kind of excited to be back.
You can sit down now.
Yeah.
Indeed, we all are. Now, just one more thing before we leave. Be sure to check out PhotoshopWorld.com. The Photoshop World event's coming up in September. September 3rd, we're going to be in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay, of course. And myself and Pete, and you're going to be there too, aren't you?
I am.
Yes, the Photoshop girl will be there. I don't think she's going to be teaching, but you definitely want to pull her aside and just
find me in the bookstore usually.
Find her in the book. Yeah, usually in the bookstore.
Yep.
You know, so she's definitely got info. Tell her.
Telling everybody, I made this book. It's my baby. Be good to it.
She has to make sure she checks and make sure the books she's designed are getting cleared out in a timely fashion.
She also checks if you're worthy to have the book.
You don't want to buy that guy's Lightroom book. I have a Lightroom book.
This one's got a pretty cover on it. That's how she sells the books. You know, never mind the content inside. It's all about the cover. So, once again, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you soon. And until then, bye-bye.